Welcome to Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer, a podcast where testicular cancer survivors, caregivers, and others who have navigated the cancer journey share their stories. The podcast comes to you from the Max Mallory Foundation, a nonprofit family foundation focused on educating about testicular cancer in honor and in memory of Max Mallory, who died in 2016 at the young age of 22 from testicular cancer. Had he survived, Max wanted to help young adults with cancer. This podcast helps meet that goal. Here now is your host, Joyce Lofstrom, Max's mom and a young adult cancer survivor.
Hi, this is Joyce, and with me today is PJ Branco, who's going to share his testicular cancer story with us. But more than that, we're going to start with what he's been doing to give back cancer awareness, and specifically testicular cancer. It's been 10 years since PJ was diagnosed with his cancer. His parents have also survived cancer. We want to talk about living with cancer over time. So PJ, I'm so glad that you could join me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So before we get into your story, tell me about the PanMass challenge that you just finished a few days ago. You are a living proof cyclist, so tell us the details.
Yeah, for sure. So I just finished the Pan Mass Challenge, or the PMC, on Sunday. The PMC was started back in 1980 by a man named Billy Starr, and he started it because his mother was diagnosed with cancer, and he wanted to figure out a way to give back, and he knew that he could do that through cycling. So since 1980, the Pan Mass Challenge has raised over $1 billion cumulatively for
Wow.
Dana-Farber and the Jimmy Fund. Last year, the yearly gift that they make to Dana-Farber and the Jimmy Fund was $75 million. And this year, their goal is $76 million. So I ride the 2-day Sturbridge to Provincetown, 186-mile route. And really, the reason why I ride it is I see it as a way to give back to the staff at Dana-Farber that cared for me while I was going through my treatment and while my mom was going through her treatment, because every dollar that I raise through the Pan Mass goes straight to Dana-Farber and the Jimmy Fund to support pediatric and adult cancer care.
That's wonderful. Wow. And you've been doing this for what? How many years have you been writing?
My third year.
Third year.
So I
Okay.
think, yeah, I'm in it at this point. So I think I'll be doing it for a long time, hopefully, if my body allows me to.
Yeah. So it's a 2-day race. That's really a lot of time and miles. So I know you had a goal, a financial goal. Did you meet your goal this year?
I'm only $1,200 short of my $10,000 goal.
Okay.
So I'm well past my minimum, which is great. If anybody listening would love to donate, if you could go to pmc.org and donate to PJ Branco. My number is PB0321.
Great. That's perfect. I wanted to make sure we got that in.
Yeah.
So tell us your testicular cancer story. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed 10 years ago with testicular cancer, stage 1 seminoma. My cancer journey started with my family back in 2005 when my mom was actually diagnosed with breast cancer. So at the time I was in high school, I had a lot of emotions and feelings at that point. I didn't really know how to handle a cancer diagnosis, especially for my mom, who is one of my heroes. And then a handful of years later, my dad was diagnosed in 2009 with colon cancer. And at that point, I was in college. And again, a whole host of emotions just runs through you when you hear that diagnosis. And especially with now my dad, who's my other hero, being diagnosed with cancer, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Both my parents have now been diagnosed with cancer. A handful of years later, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And I went through surgery. And after I went through my surgery, I had a right radical orchiectomy. And after my surgery, my oncologist basically said, at this point, you have an 85% chance of cure.
Mm.
If you do chemo, it will jump to 95%. And seeing what chemo and radiation did to my parents and the how hard it is to go through those treatments for people, I decided to forego chemo at that point because B plus in my book is like, that's great. Like
Yeah.
85% is awesome. We're solid. Let's move on to the next thing. Unfortunately, a handful of months later, I was actually getting ready to do a Spartan race at Fenway Park. And that morning, I had my scan, which was my 3 month post-op check-in. And they found one of my lymph nodes in my lower back was inflamed or enlarged, excuse me. And at that point, they basically said it looks like it's starting to spread or could spread. So at this point, you basically have to go through chemo. So the day after Thanksgiving that year, I sat down for my first infusion.
And I know you got through that. It's been 10 years, so that's
Mhm.
wonderful. I know what you mean too about hearing a parent has cancer. My parents didn't, but I'm a cancer survivor too, and my kids were young, and it's hard. You just don't know what's next. So, yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns, and I think that's the scariest part, especially if you are going through this the first time or have a loved one or a friend that's going through this the first time. The question is kind of like, one, how do I support them? What do they need me to do? I think at the most basic level, just supporting the person, just being there for them, as simple as it sounds, not asking them like, how are you feeling? Obviously check in with them, but cancer patients and people going through treatment here, how are you feeling so often that it feels, at least to me, it felt like I was hearing that a dozen times a day. And I was like, I'm here, I'm still going, we're
Right,
moving through it,
right.
right? But it was the people that were there for me that were like, hey, I brought you, lunch or dinner, or I'm just going to sit here with you, right? And it doesn't matter if we talk about something or we're in silence, but it's those people that made the greatest impact for me on my journey.
So, what do you think was your biggest challenge during that time? Your cancer.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, the hardest part was my body did not respond to the chemo very well at all. So during my treatment, they gave me a white blood cell booster that I reacted poorly to. So that is now, I'm actually allergic to that. So that was one of the first hurdles that I had to go through. But I have neuropathy in my hands and my feet from the chemo, which is nerve damage. I basically had no immune system by the time I was done with chemo, and my body just was getting hit really hard by it. So I I struggled being a previous athlete and someone who is very active. Just my body was not taking it well. And that was hard for me mentally to get over that hurdle of thinking I should be able to do this or my body should be reacting better to this. But in all reality, I mean, since then, I've come to terms with they're pumping you with platinum-based radioactive drugs, and there's a lot happening in your body at that time, right? So it's hard to go through, and giving yourself that grace is hard at the time because you kind of just want to like get to the next thing and be done with it and through with it, right? And giving yourself that grace to kind of back off and breathe a little bit can be difficult.
I think you make a great point, the comment about giving yourself grace. I think so many of us when we're faced with any challenge, we don't, and you really have to be able to do that. And I think sometimes with cancer, what I've always tried to tell myself is that it was fixed. It's fixable. The drugs worked, whatever it was, and I'm lucky that I had that type of cancer versus,
Hmm.
not. So I applaud you.
Yeah.
Just that's a great attitude. I often ask people I talk with, depending on where they are, but you are lucky you had access to Dana-Farber, which is one of the best cancer treatment centers in the world. Can
Mhm.
you just talk a little bit about and you have already touched on it, but just the care at Dana-Farber and just a perspective on that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I consider myself very lucky that Dana-Farber is what I call in my backyard. It's really 30 minutes away from us in Boston, right? And I mean, granted, with Boston traffic, it's an hour and 15, but
yeah.
it's super easy to get to. And every time we got into the hospital, we noticed people that had traveled from all over, right? They had flown in from different countries, driven in from different states, flown in from different states, and I felt incredibly lucky to be able to just drive to one of the top cancer centers and be able to get my treatment there. And when you're there, it's a hospital that it's a massive hospital. You could easily get lost in it, right?
Mhm.
But the staff, the doctors, the nurses there truly make you feel like you are the only person that they are focused on. And when you're going through something like that, it's incredibly important to understand, okay, this person is here for me as a human, not
Mhm.
as a patient or another number, right? My oncologist, when I was originally diagnosed, I met with two oncologists in the same room at the same time, and they basically said, like, pick one of us. Who do you want to work with?
No.
Right. So they put more on me and saying, like, what are you comfortable with? It's going to be a journey, right? There's going to be hurdles in this. We're here to help you along the way. We're here to give you options. We will give you, if you do XYZ, here is the possible outcomes. If you do ABC, here are the possible outcomes, right? We recommend one over the other for these reasons, but the choice is up to you. So during my journey, it was touching that I always had the same team around me. They knew me as a person. They knew how my body was reacting. They were constantly checking in on, hey, how did the last round go? How are you feeling today? How did you feel while you were at home for the past few days? How's your diet been? How have you been mentally, right? And they're doing all these checks that, while you're in it, you feel like they're just checking the boxes. But truly what they're doing is checking in on you as a person and making sure that you are still healthy and strong enough to continue to fight the cancer that you are trying to get through. So I always had the same nurses, same doctors. I remember when I was getting my IVs put in, I had a lot of trouble and anxiety with it. I'm not a huge fan of needles, so having
Mm.
IVs constantly put in
Yeah.
tended to ratchet up my anxiety. And one nurse that helped me through it, she basically said, just request me every time you come in. And she didn't do IVs. She was a nurse that worked on the floors, but she was happy to come down, help me with my IV to help me get through it and just have that same constant so that it wasn't a new person every time that I had to, like, quote unquote get used to, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And I think you also touched on a very important point that I noticed, well, in my own treatment in my son Max is when the doctor talks to you, the patient. And I remember one physician asked Max, so what do you understand about what you have right now? And let Max talk about it and explain where he was. And then, as you've described too, the clinicians wanted to make sure you were okay. Have a nurse say that, request me every time. That's really, I think, very special and the way it
Yeah,
should be.
absolutely.
So I read an article, one of the articles I read about you, and you talked about how the cancer affected you in many ways. It was what, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, just
Hmm.
those emotions. Can you talk a little bit about that as part of your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I remember was when I was diagnosed, a lot of people were kind of shocked because they're always like, you're so healthy, you
Mm.
like you're an athlete, you're active. And one thing I've learned about cancer is it doesn't really care about if you're
No.
healthy or not. It can affect you. And it hurt to hear people say that. And I know they didn't mean it in a hurtful way, but hearing people say, like, you take really good care of yourself, like, what happened, what went wrong? And it's like, I don't have the answer to that. I may never
Yeah.
find out the answer to that, right? So mentally, I'm my brain is racing of, like, what could I have done differently? But honestly, I don't know if there is anything that I could have done differently. It could have been a whole host of factors
Right. Yeah.
that I was diagnosed, right? So that weighed on me for a while because I was always trying to think of, like, what could we have changed or what could we have done differently that we may not have been diagnosed. Emotionally, it's hard because even with all of the people around you, there are points where you still do feel alone in your journey.
Yeah.
And it's not for anyone that is not trying hard enough or is not supporting you enough. It's just there are points that you hit in your journey that you feel like you can only do this by yourself or it's only you fighting. But it's really important to take a step back and realize that if you, whether it's friends, family, an external support system, like there are always resources available to you. And especially nowadays, there's groups, there are foundations out there that if you don't have family or friends that can support you, these foundations are willing to step in and take on that support system. And they're incredibly resourceful. Whatever you need, they will help you find. So I'd recommend that if you feel like you need help, reach out. There's always someone out there that is willing to help, whether it is friends, family members, a nonprofit, a foundation, the American Cancer Society, they have an abundance of resources that are willing to help people out. Spiritually, it was tough because there was a lot of questions and a lot of, why me? Why, quote unquote, why was I chosen? What does this really mean? So that's taken me a long time to kind of go through and sort through on my own. And then physically, I kind of spoke to this a little bit earlier, but my body just did not react very well. And mentally, I was frustrated by that. I was upset by it. And I wanted to just push through things and push my body to like get better, to do more. And luckily, since I've realized, it's okay to take your foot off the gas sometimes and relax or lay down or sleep all day, especially
Yeah.
when you're going through treatment, like that is totally okay. And if that's what you need, that's what you need. When I was younger, especially coming out of college and being a football player, I was always, pushing myself to do more, 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 more. And I think our society, we're constantly pushing to do better, to achieve more. And I think that's something that we need to realize that as humans, it's not always possible. And we're going to break down, whether we're going through treatment or not, right? We might get too stressed, we might get too overwhelmed, too anxious. So it's something that as humans, we have to have a little bit more grace with ourselves and realize like we aren't machines. We can't just keep pushing. We have to relax and give ourselves that grace.
Yeah, you're right. Very, agree with everything you said. And I think too, a lot with cancer, you have to, over time, and when it's the treatment centers make the adjustment, is like you were
Mhm.
describing what you can do now. Maybe you couldn't, things you want to do now, maybe you can't do, but there's another, I'm thinking of sports maybe or exercise. Maybe there's
Yeah.
another way to approach it that will still work.
Mhm.
And I just
Yeah.
wanted to make a sports comment, only because you're in Boston and you have all those great teams. And
Yep.
I'm in Chicago. We have great teams, and then I'm from Kansas City originally, so I have to mention the
Mhm.
Chiefs. But it's great. You mentioned Fenway and all that. So anyway, it's just kind of a side
Yeah.
note. I think it's fun. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember after my surgery, it was a big achievement for me to walk down my driveway
yeah,
and back. And this is coming from someone who just finished a 186-mile bike ride, this weekend. So
yeah,
again, it's that mental hurdle. And like you said, Boston is known as a big sports town. So it's always, how do we win another one?
right. I know. Yeah, always next year, right? So,
Yep, exactly.
so well, it's your 10-year anniversary since your testicular cancer diagnosis. So, what's ahead for you? Anything you want to share about yourself, career, family?
Yeah, I think for me, from a family point of view, just trying to focus on the here and now. I have a 4-year-old and he's full of life, and I just want to be supportive of him and be around him and let him know that we'll always be there for him no matter what he chooses, right? And from a career standpoint, I'm in a very solid place right now where I feel like I can, go to work, get all my stuff done and have really good achievements there, solid achievements, and then I can come home and really support my family and feel truly loved by everyone that's around me. My parents, my sister and her family, and my family as well, my wife and my son. In terms of, you know, hobbies and goals, I think I'll continue riding the pain mask, like I said, as my body allows, and trying to give back as much as possible to an organization that likely helped me during my
Yeah,
cancer journey. And then continuing to just be a resource for others out there. I've had a lot of friends that either have been diagnosed or have questions about cancer or their cancer journeys that they might be struggling with. I've talked to a lot of people around testicular cancer and the type of cancer that I had and what the expectations are, as well as they've had, friends, family, loved ones that have been diagnosed as well. And it not necessarily with testicular cancer, with other types of cancer, but they're like, what the heck is going on? How can I help support? Right. So just trying to be a resource for as many people as possible and trying to help everyone out. At the end of the day, we're all humans hurtling through a rock in space, and we're all just trying to make it to the end of the day.
yeah,
So
yeah.
however we can help support each other that's what I'm here to do.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So it's a good segue to once again tell people how they can donate to your PanMass site, if you want to share that again.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So if you are able to donate, if you go to pmc.org, my PMC ID is PB0321. You can search me on the pmc.org site and make a donation through there. And again, 100% of what you donate goes straight to Dana-Farber and the Jimmy Fund to help with adult and pediatric cancer care.
Yep. Perfect. So my last question, PJ, is what song,
Mhm.
when you hear it, do you just have to sing along?
This is a great one. I love this question so much, and I had to think about it for so long. I love all types of music, truly. I'm the type of person that will listen to anything. My son is in a huge Queen phase right now,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
anything Freddie Mercury, but he loves "We Will Rock You." He starts playing air guitar in the back seat when we're in the car. He'll start singing "We Will Rock You." So I think it's got to be "We Will Rock You" by Queen.
I love that song. That is such a great song to just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
not just sing along, but move along. So yeah, that's
yep,
good. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk with me, and congrats on your ride over the weekend. And
Thank you.
just thanks for just all you're doing to give back to and help other people with cancer. So much
Yeah.
appreciated. So
Of course, of course. I really appreciate you having me. This was great to talk about. And yeah, if anyone is looking for resources, obviously reach out to Joyce or myself, and we're happy to point you in the right direction.
yeah, that's exactly right. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joyce.
Thank you for watching this episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast directory. You can also visit the Max Mallory Foundation at www.maxmalloryfoundation.com/podcast to listen to previous podcast episodes or donate to the foundation. Join us again next time for another episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer.